So yesterday was an interesting day with the Lightning. It was our first long trip that we've taken with it, and it ended up being 2 trips in total. But there was one shorter trip that was about 40 miles round trip. And that one, the interesting thing that happened there, the temperature throughout the day, the high temperature was in the low 50s, and it was supposed to be windy, but the first trip that we took, it wasn't really terribly windy. It was probably 15 miles an hour, maybe, roughly. But yeah, within the first trip, at some point, we started out at 90% charge, and then at some point, it suddenly lost quite a bit of range. And with no explanation, it just suddenly lost it. And then when she got back from that leg of our trip there, we had 70% charge, and then we were going on the second trip after that. So we actually plugged it in for a little bit. We were, about a half hour or so before we had to leave, and it didn't gain really much of any charge, in that time frame. But we got in the pickup and took off, and our second trip for the day was about 110 miles round trip. And the wind was going to pick up. We're going to be driving straight into it for a lot of the trip. We're close to straight into it, and so we're a little bit concerned now. We're starting out at 70% charge, and our economy gauge is basically stating that we're getting 1.4 miles per kilowatt, which is really poor. Basically, in terms of the 320 mile range it's supposed to have, if you're getting 1.4 miles per kilowatt, that's cutting your range in half. So that's a pretty significant issue. I never planned on that before purchasing it. I didn't think it was possible to lose half of your range because it was a little windy. But we got up there, and it looked like we could make it back. And I thought, well, the wind will be kind of a little bit behind us on the way back, so hopefully that'll improve our range. And so we got done doing what we were doing up there at our destination, and then on our way back, the range did not improve. The economy was pretty similar to what it was on the way up. And the wind had shifted a little bit, so it was straight side wind is what I would call it for most of that leg. And then we did turn straight into it, but basically, so 3/4 of the way back from that destination, we had a straight side wind, and yeah, our economy was maybe a little bit better than it was on the way up, but not enough to actually increase our range. And then when we got to our turn, then we turned and actually drove straight into the wind again. And at that point, we were already really low on range. We were down to 30 miles or so, and we had 15 miles to go. So we're like, as long as it doesn't decrease too much, we should hopefully make it home anyways. And we were the last stretch there, even driving straight into the wind. We went 70 miles an hour the whole day, just for consistency. But the last leg that looked like we'd probably run out of charge, it actually hung in there, and we got home with 20 miles of range left. So it did. In the end, it worked out. We made it home, but it was definitely a negative experience for us. We were not expecting to have range anxiety to that degree that day, even with the wind. I mean, it was going to be, the whole trip should have been about half of the total range of the vehicle, and we started out a little bit less than 100%, but we shouldn't have had any trouble. Is where I was at. My wife was not concerned, and then once we're driving into the wind, we're like, this is not what we expected. So I'm hoping that maybe it's a calibration issue. It is still a new vehicle. As we were driving, it has less than 200 miles on it. As we were driving to our second destination, so I was like, okay, maybe there's not enough information for the pickup to really calculate how far it could go, and also hopefully it doesn't know its true capacity of the battery. I don't know how it makes its calculations, but hopefully there's an error in calculation so that maybe it wasn't as charged up as it told us it was, or maybe a range calculation. Obviously, that's going to vary based on the economy that you're getting. So I did a lot of research on the internet last night, trying to tell myself that things are going to be okay. And basically, it sounds like most people are getting 2 miles per kilowatt or better. And really, a person should be doing that, because 2 miles per kilowatt would give you over 200 miles at least on one charge. So That's really kind of what I was banking on. I was never banking on getting less than 200 miles on a charge. I mean, it's supposed to go 320 and shouldn't get less than 200, but we did figure it out. So it's the battery is warranted to maintain a 70% capacity. So we calculated that out, and it turns out to be like 220 miles would be 70%, and we didn't have it fully charged before we left. So I don't know if that would have made any difference or not, but basically, if it doesn't produce 220 miles on full charge, then there's a warrantable issue there, assuming they don't argue with us stating that temperature variations and wind and things, the external factors aren't playing a part there. Obviously, I don't know how you would prove that, but that's the other thing too. So there's a battery gauge or a battery explanation part or app on the pickup. So just like on your phone, you can open up the battery page and see what's been using all of your batteries. So, and I believe it's even called "Where Did My Power Go?" So we're looking at that, and almost all the power went to driving. There was a small, tiny sliver for climate control, because I mean, you don't need much heat at 50 degrees, and no air conditioning really. But the air conditioner was on. I shut it off because I was trying to conserve power. But yeah, I didn't even let my wife charge her phone. It's like, we're not using any extra power on this trip, and 0 variables if possible. So yeah, it should have been a really good test as far as mileage and what the pickup would be capable of doing, with as few of external factors as possible. But the other thing where we did lose a little bit of range, a little bit of power, was they called it external temperature, I believe, or external climate. And it's kind of confusing the way it's written. It's not like obvious where that power went. We're not trying to heat the outside, so we didn't have the windows down, but where that power actually went was conditioning the batteries, heating or cooling the batteries, or heating or cooling the electric motors, I suppose. So basically what it's saying is the external temperature was not perfect, and it needed to either cool the batteries or heat up the batteries to some degree. And at 50 degrees, really, the heat should have been taken care of very easily, and it shouldn't have had to warm them up. I wouldn't think. And we didn't stay at our destination long enough, I don't think, for everything to completely cool off or anything. There are gauges on the dash that show you your temperatures of your wheel motors and your batteries, and they were dead set in the middle, so obviously it was keeping them where they needed to be. And basically I thought it was a pretty good test. There weren't a lot of external factors other than the wind. The wind was basically the main factor, and again, we weren't driving straight into it or anything, but in North Dakota this is normal, like a 25-mile-an-hour wind, which is probably about what that was. That's not out of the normal range for us. It's pretty common, especially this time of year. So if that wind is going to decrease our range by that much on a regular basis, then we're probably going to have an issue. And it probably wasn't, maybe it wouldn't be feasible, if that's going to be a normal occurrence. But again, the research I did sounds like 2 miles per kilowatt at 70 miles per hour plus driving speed really should be achievable. And if we can do that, then we can probably make it work. But as far as yesterday, that was a pretty eye-opening experience for us, is what I would call it. I wouldn't say it was a successful, happy situation there, but like I said, we're going to charge it to 100%, see if maybe giving the battery a full range of charge, might help it, do its calculations and figure out where it needs to be. And hopefully again, I don't know how it calculates the power usage, if it's like an amp meter on the power cables leaving the battery. I don't know how accurate that really is either. But it said 1.4 on the way up, and then maybe 1.5, 1.6 on the way back. But we should be seeing over 2 if we're going to get any kind of range out of it. So I'll keep you updated on what we find out. But we're going to play with the charge capacity a little bit, and put some more miles on it and see what kind of results we get.